Alright guys, as promised, here we are. We're in the shop. We got my X3. We got Steven's X3 right here. And we need to do some spring adjustment. I was actually just looking at mine, throwing the tape measure on it, and the front is actually sitting from this point to the ground right about 18 inches. Okay? And the rear, from this point to there, it's hard to do with one hand, but it's sitting about 16 and a half, 17 inches, which actually is pretty perfect. I don't know that I want to make another adjustment, honestly. Well, actually, I've never, this is the weird thing. So, if you look on the forums or whatever, all X3s, people have always had to adjust the springs. I think 2020 XRS's got a different spring package, so that's what this is. And I've never had to adjust the springs on this. I've never touched them. I've moved the crossovers a little bit to add a little bit more travel before the mainspring kicked in, but I've never had to make an adjustment. I don't know if I'm going to. I might bring the back up some a little bit, actually. Maybe just adjust it down a little bit, adjust the crossovers. The only thing I don't like is whenever we get it loaded up, obviously me, the wife, the baby, we get the cooler loaded up. It does sit down some, so maybe it'd be worth bumping it up an inch. But at the same time, the tire I plugged the other day, you know, right here, it's low, so it needs air. All the tires are sitting on 8 psi, except for that one. That one's probably 7, 6, somewhere in there. But yeah, so I'm kind of debating on what I need to do there. Maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. But what we absolutely need to do is Steven's. So my ride height, 16.5 is actually what people recommend. And we had to make several adjustments on Steven's XDS, like 2 or 3 times to get it back to the correct ride height. And we used the, it was a 2020. So we use Fox's recommended settings. I mean, called the Fox Tune. Most people probably know about that, but that's what we used for the settings, and it worked great. But we had to adjust it several times to stay there. So here we've got Steven's rig. He has added weight, but man, I don't know if he's added that much weight, you know. I was looking up, and there's a couple guys on the forums. They said on their Smart Shock units that they came with, you know, the 16 inches of ride height, 16 and a half. But then after a few miles, see, Steven's got 450. It sat down to 13 inches. Well, that's exactly what Steven's rear end is at. So he's not here. He's got some work stuff he's dealing with. So since we're going on a ride here in a couple weeks to Arkansas, I'm gonna get it ready for him. So you can see, I mean, it needs to come up quite a bit. I mean, think mine, the bottom of my skid plate is here, and his is at 13 inches. So his is right here, or mine's right here, 16, 17. His is way down. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. It's pretty easy. It doesn't necessarily affect ride height, but I would be willing to bet it does. Or not ride height, I meant ride. It does affect ride height. People say it doesn't affect the ride so much, but I think it does. To me, it would have to be sitting down that low. You'd have to be getting out of the bypass zone in the shock. I would think. I don't know exactly where the bypass zone begins and ends, but just I know it ends somewhere, and I mean, this, if it's not, it's got to be at the very bottom of the bypass zone, so you're going to be in and out of the bypass zone a lot. Well, as soon as you go out of the bypass zone, the shock's going to start working, trying to stop movement, and you're going to get a stiffer ride. Like I said, I don't know this for sure. I don't know the exact specs on where everything is in the shock, but that's just my thinking. So I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and lift the rear of mine up. I'm going to run the shocks. I'm going to add an inch, make it just a hair taller in the rear, and then we'll get to Steven. So I'll show you that. Alright, so what I do, I usually just use a chisel and a good heavy hammer, knock this ring loose, the top ring, you know, your lock ring, and then jack it up as far as you can, and then, man, I just take and twist the whole spring. Let me see if I can do it here. So just twist the whole spring. Sometimes, I mean, it's going to be best up here in these threads. Put some WD-40, make sure it's not covered in mud. I'll probably spray a little WD-40 to make it a little easier, but that's how you move it. So since I want an inch of ride, I'm just going to move this down half an inch. And that should give me what I'm looking for. I mean, I'm sure it's different on most equipment, but usually add a ½ inch to your spring, you get an inch of ride height. So that's on most stuff, that's the rule. It's probably not exact on everything, but that's what I'm going to go with for now. And you do want to make sure that you, whenever you measure or whenever you make the adjustments, make sure that from this, once you tighten everything down, the top of this ring to the top of your shock is the same on both sides. You want both sides to be adjusted the same. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that adjusted. Get some WD-40 on the shocks. All right, so I got both springs adjusted, driver and passenger side. You can see the nice shiny clean that's never had crap on it. Moved them ½ inch from the top of this to the bottom of the shock cap or whatever that is 9 inches on both sides exactly. I didn't plan for it to be that way, but that's the way it is. Make sure whenever you go to check your ride height, you got it jacked up like this. Whenever you drop it down, now it's way stinking high. I mean, let me measure this, see what it's going to come out to. It's going to be crazy. This is not going to be the actual ride height, but that's 21 inches. What you have to do is you have to take the scrub out of it. So you've got to let the suspension relax, roll it back and forth. You know, gotta let it move around some to get all this pressure, the pressure and the tension out of the system, and then you can come back and measure it. So now measuring it, we're right at 18. Well, hold on. So we're right at 18 inches. So adding a ½ inch gave me, shoot, a little more than an inch of travel or ride. So that's perfect. That's where I want it. That way it's a hair high, so that when it's loaded, it'll be back at the ride height that I really want it to be at. So one thing, so Stevens is an XRS with smart shocks. So one thing if you're doing this on a smart shocks unit, sorry, Stevens a midget, so I gotta move the seat back so I can move his machine around. But I actually read this on the forums because I was kind of looking for some specific adjustments for smart shocks, if there were any, but there really weren't. One thing they suggested is make sure you're in comfort mode, and the reason is it is easier for the machine to turn back to a relaxed state than, like, let's say if you have it in Sport Plus. That's why, like, if this thing were all jacked up and you know, we ran it hard and we had it in Sport Plus, you come and park it and it's kind of in a bind. If you put it in comfort, it would actually drop a little bit. You've probably seen it on Polaris razors and, you know, with dynamics. It's because, you know, they're having a hard time returning back to their relaxed state. So that made sense to me. So put it in comfort mode, got it out here in the open. I mean, sitting down in it is like sitting in a Corvette or something compared to sitting down in mine. But so we're gonna get on this thing. We're gonna do the front and rear. Because we're making such an adjustment, I don't know, we might have to see. Look, the crossovers right here, I mean, there is no travel to the crossover. So I don't know what the crap, I don't know who adjusted this. Can-Am, what the heck is going on? So basically he's riding on main spring, so it's probably actually a little rough. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to have to adjust this bad boy down. I'll probably match the crossover with mine, because I have quite a bit of crossover on mine, because it helps, you know, this spring is a lot less rate than this mainspring. So I'll probably match that so he's got a good ride. Mine rides excellent. I love how it rides. But yeah, this is ridiculous. I bet this is, I haven't ridden in this thing since it was new. I mean, like new. It's only got 450 miles on it now, but I can imagine the ride is not where it needs to be. And I bet if Steven sits in here, and like Jeff was in here the other day with him, I bet you it was riding on that and it wasn't even using these springs. So that kind of sucks. I hope he sees an improvement. He should be here, but he won't be here for a couple hours, so I'm just going to get it done for him. And I'll show him my findings. Of course, he'll see this video, but there should be an improvement on the ride. Man, I'm honestly kind of blown away at that, because, I mean, that defeats the purpose of having, you know, this super nice, expensive machine with electronic shocks, dual rate springs, because it's just riding on the main spring. Alright, well, let me get this done. We'll check the crossovers, make sure they're in a good spot for him. And hopefully that should give him a better ride. He'll enjoy it more, obviously. Guys, I'm dumb. I was trying to do this without WD-40, and I was like killing my hands. They're all like red. A little bit of WD-40 right here, and then at the bottom in the cup, just right inside there. Just makes us look. Well, I didn't break that one free yet. Let me move you over here. Look, I one hand turn it now, whereas I was struggling with two. WD-40, use it. All right, so I got the first adjustment going. I moved, so it was sitting, I went ahead and took a measurement. It was sitting at 14. I want to run it up to 17. That way there's still a little room for sag. I mean, I'm sure the springs are going to sag more. It's just how it is. So I'm going to run it up to 17, so it's a touch higher. So I'm going to make my first measurement here and see where we're at. I just ran it back and forth to scrub it out. So on the threads, I added 1.25 inches to get 3 inches. Sorry, this little skid plate they added here that we weren't supposed to add is in the way. So, boom. We're actually at 16.5. I'm gonna go ahead and lift it back up. I'm gonna run everything another 1/4 inch. Run those two another 1/4 inch to get a little more lift. And then I'm just gonna tighten it out. Wherever it lands at, that's where it lands. It should land right at 17. All right, the front should be right where I want it. I'm gonna wheel everything around to the rear here. Got my WD-40. Make it easier on me. Let me get this thing jacked up. I'm gonna get the ride height set, look at the crossover rings, see where I need to put those at. That should improve his ride. And I mean, you can already tell just by looking right here. I mean, the front of this thing is way higher. Look how it leans up. It's Squatted X3. Maybe I should just leave it like that for him. Maybe lower the rear even. He'd probably like that. That'd be pretty funny looking on the trailer heading to Arkansas. I ran the springs down 2 inches on each side. Haven't tightened these down because I'm going to go take it, just hit some bumps, kind of let it compress, decompress, and then I'll pull it back in here and see where it's at. Here's some popping. That's probably the sway bar, if I had guess on there. The sway bars come loose on these things like crazy. So, man, it's hard to get used to this thing's throttle. It's so, I don't know, it's like in reverse, it's all automatically in eco mode or something. So, just gonna pop it through this little ditch here. To me, it feels insanely smooth. So I'll be interested to see what Steven says when he gets here. That should be enough jacking around. I'll pull it back over there, get it measured up. All right, so I just jacked it back up. I measured it. It was still just a hair below 16, which is kind of crazy since I added 2 inches on the springs. But man, I'm almost to the range where I'm gonna have to run the crossovers down just so I can adjust the shock so far down. So I guess I'll loosen those crossovers and get them loose. I'll probably run another 3/4 of an inch on the springs. I want to see it in the 17 to 18 mark on the inches. Actually, I'll probably put it 17. So I'll probably run another 3/4 of an inch on the springs. Run the crossovers down, and then I'll adjust the crossovers after I get the ride height set. All right, so I did the final adjustment on the ride height on the rear Stevens, 17 inches on the dot. So I'll probably, because Steven's in it for the ride. I mean, he likes good stuff, but he's definitely in it for the ride. So I'll probably run this guy all the way up the crossover rings. Just go ahead and snug that up there. That way you get full compression of this tender, or I don't know if it's a tender spring, but the smoother spring. I told everybody if you didn't show up, I was going to leave it in
what is that? The South Carolina squad or whatever the heck that crap is?
Yeah, squatted. I was going to leave it squatted.
Oh, that's fine.
All right, so check this out. Here's how your rear setup is jacked. So, added 2 5/8 inches to the spring. Okay. Here's your crossover, and that's where the it goes and engages the mainspring. How it was set up, this crossover was not even a 1/4 inch from here. So your ride was probably not great.
Dang.
So ran it down. It's perfect. Everything's 17 inches right now. You'll probably gain a little bit once you air the tires up and everything. But crossovers are all the way up since you like to ride. Yeah, so the rear was definitely not adjusted well at all. It was terrible.
I'm gonna line the prairies up and jump them.
So it should be insanely better on ride now.
Yeah, I mean it's settled pretty quick for when we got it, but again, all we did was just hit the ground running. We didn't dial any of the suspension in when we did any of the maintenance or anything. So
right.
But it makes sense just how basic these are set up from the factory and then from your dealer, and then people that don't know any better would just be rolling with it and think this is great.
Yeah.
This is how it's supposed to be.
But even the adjustments on yours, like if you do the measurements from the top of where the spring seat is all the way to the top, Like nothing on the front or rear matches mine. So it's got to be a different spring setup or something. Yeah. Which makes sense because we've never adjusted mine at all, ever.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
It's always sat high. I only adjusted the rear.
We adjusted it once, didn't we?
We went to, and then we measured it, and it was still
fine.
sitting there.
Yeah, still fine. My XDS, we did.
What, three times?
Three times, yeah.
But I pulled
that sucker would get down to like 12 inches off the freaking ground.
Yeah.
12 inches, and I think we got it, up to 14 something, and then 15 pegged down.
So I bumped the rear of mine up 1 inch to deal with when it's loaded up.
Yeah.
And the cooler's on the back.
Yeah, you ride more with the family and
right.
So and a co-pilot more than I do.
Yeah. So the front added.
Dang, that's a monster truck, man.
1.5 inches in the front. Your crossover rings were good there, so you probably should be getting an okay ride, and they're still adjusted way up. So you'll have plenty of room, but.
Yeah, just think the grass was only like right here.
Yeah.
And I was just smoking everything. This sucker was super freaking low.
Yeah.
And I don't. What was weird is whenever the battery was dying, you could actually see how bad it was drooping.
Huh.
From
makes sense.
The smart shocks, because it did. Hey, you check your power steering, and then it did check your smart shocks.
Yeah.
Check smart lock, all that stuff started failing because I didn't know that it wasn't charging when I was driving it.
Right.
And I had to hurry and limp it back. And by the time I got back, there was 7 volts, and that sucker, I mean, it was just, on its freaking face. And after that, I never saw it again. So, and that was super low when we got it off the trailer the other day. So, yeah, it needed it, but
I adjusted it in comfort. So, at
90% of the time.
Yeah, at a neutral spot. I mean, it maybe get a little bit higher, but yeah. I took it just around the back and brought it back to measure it so everything could kind of move around and settle, and it's way smoother than mine. Like, there is a difference for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty significant.
Oh, another thing. So you probably I don't know this for sure. This is a hypothesis. It's a hypothesis, like I said. So because they have bypass, right? There's a certain zone where it rides, where basically there's no restriction from the shock. Well, once you get down past the zone, top or bottom, it's going to start restricting fluid. Sitting that low, my hypothesis is that if you weren't out of the bypass zone, you had to have been close. So it would have been engaging the suspension more, if that makes sense.
You want to rip around the block?
I don't know. I just took it through the ditch and stuff. Just see what it felt like. It's a lot different. Yeah, it doesn't. Like, mine has a little, even though it's smooth, it still has a little bit of a jolt to it. Feels a little more floaty. Watch those cactus. Yeah, you probably have to get used to it. Slung over here. Getting taller.
Obviously, we're in comfort, so comfort would always kind of let it just glide like you're in a freaking Cadillac. Let it like Cadillac, a bill or something. You know, when you're just like, town. You almost don't feel any of that. It's just comical how, like, in comfort mode, it lets you just, the front lifts up on these things pretty significantly, but in comfort mode, it freaking, you're like that. And then you just can visibly see it sink when you let off. Yeah. Obviously, you can see that on all of them, but comfort mode on one of these,
I'll try it Sport Plus.
it's significant.
Go to Sport Plus. See if it roll. Yeah, that's different. Yeah, that's a lot different. It didn't seem like it pulled up this near as much.
But the amount of roll You know, there's another big difference between the two.
It's like nothing.
The state's pretty even.
Kind of pedestrian here.
Then you put it in.
Comfort, and it leads right over. That's crazy.
Pretty flat.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
That's scary. Actually, I'm like a little more uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, you definitely feel it. All that body roll like you know in the sport.
Dude, drag racing would have to be put it in comfort mode, let it bite. Golly, it does stick more in comfort.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
Yeah, I don't know. Because obviously I think it's just shifting all that weight back and planting that rear end.
Yeah.
And obviously more weight over those tires, keeping them stuck in there and hung in there. But yeah,
Makes sense.
just how even kill it keeps it in Sport Plus.
Yeah.
It doesn't shift that weight and set the rear end, you know, kind of like obviously like on a drag setup in a race car, obviously they want it to shift and pivot that axle down.
Right.
And that rear end down.
Bite harder.
To bite harder. And I think obviously this is for electronic suspension and gigantic spring. You can kind of feel that same principle. So
Yeah, that's freaking sweet.
yeah.
Pretty happy with how that turned out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So typical.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what year, what model of X3. Super freaking common there, bud.
Yeah, we learned on our 2020s that mine's not even hooked up, but those things come loose
Yeah, so
pretty regularly.
we'll torque the piss out of them and I'm good. I don't know about that side. I always felt like it was coming from this side.
It's a little loose. There's a little slack in there, so
Gosh, that's a little.
we're gonna get that torqued up, and this thing should be ready to go to Arkansas. Mine's ready to go. Just needs gas.
Yeah, I gotta put my trailing arm guards on.
Oh yeah.
So
Steven got some trailing arm guards that are gonna go down here and along the side, right?
Yeah, I'm just tired of.
Well, these
Again, it's an off-road machine. I'm going to tear it up. I know that. I'm fine with that. But I still want to mitigate what I can. And so I got guards that go all the way right before the pivot point and all the way back below the shock. So we'll have to notch them, obviously, to accommodate the rock blocks, but that's fine. So
help keep it cleaner.
just something to keep it clean. I'm going to touch this up. So Krylon Satin Almond is everybody's go-to for get close to this color. So.
Alright guys, so that concludes this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. If you want to ask Steven something, I'll get that to him too. I try to reply to everything. So if we're doing something wrong, tell me that too. I want to know, because I want to know, I want to do everything right. As far as these side-by-sides and stuff, right. I think Steven's going to enjoy the ride better on his. Especially those crossovers in the rear. That's going to make a big difference. So comment, like, subscribe, and keep watching. We've got some stuff coming up pretty soon. We leave for Arkansas in a week and a half. We're going to go to Mania and ride the Wolfpan Gap area and all those trails and whatever mountains are up there. So we're really looking forward to that. Get away from Texas. Get into some cooler weather, and it should be some nice weather up there. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Remember to comment, like, subscribe, share it with others. Maybe they have questions about suspension tuning. I'm not an expert. I know how to set up the springs to get a correct ride height, kind of set up the crossovers, but that's it. I don't know, internal valving and all that. That's a whole different ball game that I have not ever been into. Maybe we'll be one day. Who knows? That would be cool. But again, thanks.